guys hear me all right? Okay, so here in a few minutes, we're going to have someone join that's going to come on with me. She wants to talk about how family court, how what I'm doing will benefit family court issues, you know, custody issues, CPS issues, things of that sort. And I think that it's a discussion that I want to have with everybody so we can all benefit from it because, you know, I think that that's an area that people are misunderstanding. And so I'm not going to it quite yet. We're going to wait for her to come in, but I'm going to come on a little bit early here and have a discussion with you guys about a couple things. So anybody that doesn't know me, my name is Tanawah Downing, and I'm a national civil rights advocate and litigator, and we are now litigating what will be the biggest civil rights case in American history. And it's very exciting, very exciting. So we know that the Constitution is the overarching requirements that every state must follow, right? Even John Marshall, Chief Justice John Marshall, stated in Cohen versus Virginia, McCulloch versus Maryland, he said that the power of government is defined and limited, and these limits can never be mistaken or forgotten because the Constitution is written. To what purpose are powers limited, and to what reason are those limits committed to writing, if these limits may at any time be passed by those that are intended to be restrained? The difference between a government with limited powers and unlimited powers is abolished if these limits are not confined, and if the person for whom they are imposed or acts that are prohibited and acts that are allowed are of equal obligation. Guys, why do we create a Constitution of the United States if the states don't have to follow what the Constitution requires? That's completely contrary to what every single person in America believes. That's contrary to constitutionalism. That's contrary to federalism. It's, you know, nobody believes that a state can enact its own alternative legislation, substitute it for the guarantees of the Constitution of the United States, and then go out and enforce it. That's not something that we question. And yet we see it every day. And so, you know, at the heart of what I'm doing, you guys, I mean, the real question of all is what is the role of these states within our society? Because you see, today we believe that these states are sovereign. We've been told that these states are all sovereign. Well, let me tell you what a sovereign state is by definition. A sovereign state is a state that's complete in itself, not subject to a higher government's laws. That's the definition of a sovereign state. So if these states are not subject to a higher government's laws, that means that they're not subject to the Constitution of the United States of America, which means that they can do whatever they want. They don't have to do what the Constitution requires them to do. And that would mean that we don't live in a union, because a union is defined as two or more non-sovereign states with a centralized governing structure. You see, there were three issues that our state had to, or country had to address when we went from a confederacy in 1776 into a union in 1787. When we adopted and ratified the Constitution of the United States of America, there were a couple of requirements. Facebook over here, looks like you guys might. One second, guys. I love it how people love to just butt in when I'm in the middle of these. I think people know that, and they just wind up jumping in. And all right, Facebook, you guys are back online. Sorry about that, guys. If anybody calls, I swear I'm gonna start blocking you, because I'm starting to think that you guys are doing that on purpose, and I'm not all right with that. So because I lose the train of thought here. All right, so there were three issues that our country had to address when our framers of the Constitution, when they went into that Constitutional Convention. Three issues, right? Issue number one was that there was no way to get the states to actually obey the laws that were created by the central government, because they were sovereign, and a sovereign state is not subject to a higher government's laws. So we had 13 individual sovereign states that were able to pick and choose which parts of the legislation that was created by the central government, which piece of parts they wanted to actually incorporate or not incorporate. There was nothing that required them to do it, right? And that's a big problem, because if the states are not subject to a higher government's laws, then they don't have to do what is created by the central government. They don't have to. That's issue number one. That issue was resolved by the establishment of the legislative branch of government. We have a branch of government that is equally represented by each of the regional governments. each of the regional governments come together by representatives, and they determine what is or is not the best solution for the direction of our country. They create legislation, and then that steers our country in a specific direction. But in order for the union to work, those states must have to incorporate and be subject to the laws created by the central government. They have to. That's why the supremacy clause of the Constitution, Article 6, says this Constitution, the laws of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land, right? Because they enjoy legal superiority over conflicting provisions with state constitutions and laws. Every state must do what the central government created because they are not sovereign. They are a part of a union. And a union is two or more non-sovereign states with a centralized government structure. Now, the second issue that they had to address was that there was no executive officer that was there to oversee the application and implementation of laws amongst the regional governments. Thus, they created a second branch of government, the executive branch, right? Because they needed to have someone that would make sure that these states are doing what they're supposed to be doing from the central government. The role of the president is to ensure the faithful execution of the laws. Read his oath in the Constitution, the faithful execution of laws. Therefore, if someone has sworn faith with and to the Constitution, if they've sworn to be faithful to it, that's the object of which their fidelity is bound, then guess what? The president is there to make sure that if you're not faithful, we're going to hold you accountable for your lack of faith, for your absence of faith. So that's what the president was there to do. He was there to ensure the faithful execution of laws. That was his role. So the second issue was resolved by the establishment of the second branch of government, the executive branch. The third issue was that there was no judicial authority that would make decisions that would impact each of the regional governments, right? Thus, they created the third branch of government, the judicial branch, the Supreme Court, right? So we've got issues here right now where the states are picking and choosing which parts of the central government's legislation they want to implement or not implement, right? They're saying, well, we can create laws and we can treat people however we want because we're sovereign, right? We don't have to do what the laws of the United States say we must do. In fact, how many of you walked into a courtroom in the last couple of years where the judge said, oh, the Constitution doesn't apply to my courtroom, right? That's an insane statement that's made because the only reason why your court exists, the only delegated authority that the people gave to you derives from the Constitution. So making a statement that the Constitution doesn't apply is an agent exceeding the power, authority, statutory conferred upon them by the people of the United States and committing the crime of treason, without a doubt, right? Because the only reason why it exists is because of that.
They can't hear you.
You guys can't hear me? Who can't? Facebook or TikTok? You can't hear me? Are you serious? How about now? Can you guys hear me now? You guys hear me now? All right, I'm going to dump off here and I'm going to come back on again. Okay? I'm going to drop off, come back on. Why the fuck wouldn't they be able to hear? Hang on, guys. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that. I don't know. My TikTok's not muted. That's the first time, guys. That's never happened there. I'm gonna go back live again and try it again here. I'm gonna try it again. Okay, we got some issues over here on YouTube, guys. We gotta ban a few people. So hang on, guys. All right. Okay. Hang on, guys. Okay. Guys, can you hear me over here? TikTok, can you hear me now? Can you guys hear me now? Can you guys hear me now? You guys can't hear me? Can you hear me? You can. Give me some hearts if you guys can hear me, please. Got some hearts? Okay, awesome. Okay, all right. Were you guys able to hear me at all, guys? All right, guys. So if there's more people that come onto YouTube, I'm sorry that we got that stuff going on. All right, you guys can hear me now, right? Okay, you couldn't hear me before. So let me start over and let me see if I can capture those same things. So here in a few minutes, we're going to have someone come on, okay? We're going to have someone come on, and that person is going to had some questions about how what I'm doing is going to benefit family court, CPS issues and stuff. And it was a conversation that I think that all of you guys will benefit from. So I wanted to have it in a public domain. She'll be on in a few minutes. But before then, I wanted to just have a conversation with you guys, okay? All right? Awesome. So I want to start out again with a quote from Chief Justice Marshall from Marbury versus Madison. And he said, the power of government is defined and limited, and these limits can never be mistaken or forgotten because they are written. To what purpose are powers limited? And to what reason are those limits committed to writing, if these limits may at any time be passed by those intended to be restrained? The difference between a government with limited powers and unlimited powers is abolished if these limits do not confine the person for whom they are imposed, and if acts prohibited and acts allowed are of equal obligation. Guys, to what reason do we have a Constitution of the United States of America if it does not confine those that are in place to be restrained, right? If we have rights that are guaranteed by the Constitution of the United States, but yet the states are able to exceed those restraints by their discretion, we got a pretty big problem. So anybody that doesn't know me, my name is Tanawah M, and I am a national civil rights advocate and litigator, and we are now litigating what will be the biggest civil rights case in American history. It's very exciting. It's very exciting. But at the heart of this issue, you guys, is what is the role of states within our system of government? What is the role of states? Because the states today believe that they are sovereign, okay? They believe that they're sovereign. They believe that they can do things of their own volition, and that they're sovereign and have all authority within their jurisdictional borders. Now, the definition of a sovereign state is a state that is complete in itself, not subject to a higher government's laws. That's the definition of a sovereign state. Go out and read it. Definition of a sovereign state is a state complete in itself, not subject to a higher government's laws. So as long as we permit these states to claim that they're sovereign, then that means that they're not subject to a higher government's laws. Thus, the reason why we see these states that are enacting their own alternative legislation, substituting it for the guarantees of the Constitution, and then go out and enforcing it in violation of the Constitution of the United States of America is because they claim that they are sovereign, right? And our central government is permitting that to happen. Now, again, the purpose of the Constitution of the United States of America was to establish rights and limit powers. People have rights, government has powers. Now, in some cases, these powers of the states are limited. In other cases, powers of the federal government is limited. And in even more cases, powers of both governments are limited, but they're all limited in order to preserve the individual liberties of the people, because that's what's important. So the Constitution is a law, and every law creates an obligation, right? That's all that a law is an obligation. Now, an obligation can be seen from two different perspectives. From the one bound, the obligation is a duty. From the one entitled, the obligation is a right. So every law creates an obligation in order to preserve a right, okay? So you have the right to live. We all have the right to live. God gave us the right to live. We have the right to live. But to enforce our right to live, we must create a law. And that law creates an obligation for you to not unalive someone, right? So you don't have the authority to unalive someone is because the law created an obligation or a duty for you not to do that. And if you breach your duty and unalive someone, now their right to not be alive has been violated. Thus, you've broken the law, and now that gives rise to criminal conduct, right? Because you broke the law. But that's what a law is. Law creates an obligation, creates a duty. And therefore your right to not be unalived, it doesn't exist until someone breaches their duty of not unaliving you. That's why there's a first step here that a lot of people are missing. Attorneys deal with the second step. They deal with injunctive relief. They deal with suing. They deal with the restoration or the payment for rights because they care about money. But before you can claim that someone has violated your rights, the first step that has to happen is you must show that someone had a duty and they breached their duty, thus broke the law, and that's what gives rise to your right to be able to claim injunctive relief for the violation of the right. Because your rights can't be violated until someone breaks the law, until they breach a duty. That's why all of my work is focused on the first step, because this is what attorneys don't do. This is what I do. I deal with law enforcement. I deal with substantive law. I deal with holding criminals accountable for the crimes because they broke the law. And when we do, then what happens is all of you can then show that your rights have been violated. Absent this first step, you guys do not have a case. Civil rights case, you don't have it. Because you can't claim that your civil rights have been violated until you first show someone had a duty, and that duty derives from the law. But, the catch-22 that we find ourselves in is that all these states, they say, oh, well, we're sovereign, right? And our agents are immune. And we don't understand that the immunity element, how it works, because immunity has two different sides to it, right? It has the civil side and it has the criminal side. Those are two different things, right? Civil law and criminal law. Civil law deals with the civil rights and all the rights. Criminal law deals with the criminal conduct. The agents are not criminally immune because no one in America is immune from criminal liability. Everyone is subject to their criminal conduct for any crimes they commit. Everyone, right? So, we have no right. You're welcome to go away, brother. You're welcome to take off. Go ahead and block that. Right? Is this satire? No, you're not even listening. So go ahead and take a hike. Well, you're welcome to find a different channel. Okay, so we got civil issues and civil ramifications, and we have criminal issues. The criminal issues over here, right? The criminal issues, those are dealt with for the agent. The civil issues are dealt with for the master. So if you have, you see, an agent performs mechanical duties on behalf of his master, right? This judge is only doing what the state allows him to do. He's only performing mechanical duties on behalf of the state. And in the course of his duties, if he violates someone's rights, right, someone's civil rights, then he must be held criminally liable for the crime he committed, because deprivation of rights under color of law is a crime, right? Perjury is a crime. Right? Extortion is a crime. Peonage is a crime. Misconduct is a crime. These are all crimes that are under criminal statute that they're held accountable for those crimes. And then once you hold the agent criminally liable for the crimes, then that gives rise to injunctive relief. And now you can sue the master because the agent is immune civilly because you sue the master. So when a judge breaks the law, right? When they break the law and they deprive you of rights under color of law, and thus now you have had your rights violated, before you can sue, you got to first go and hold the agent criminally liable. That's the first step. That's why everything I'm doing is focused on that, because what I'm doing is I'm going to clear up the obstruction for all of you to go out and sue to your heart's content, right? To be made whole once again for your family. This is the first step that has to happen. We have to show that there was an obligation, that there was a law, that they didn't fulfill the obligation, thus broke the law. They're criminals, and once we identify them as criminals, then we can give rise to injunctive relief. You guys can go sue. That's what attorneys do. You can do that all you want. I'm going to deal with the first part. I'm going to clear up the obstruction. Now, in the Declaration of Independence, it says we hold these truths to be self-evident, right? Guys, we hold these truths to be self-evident. Now, that word self-evident, it has meaning and it has purpose. You guys, go out and read it. You guys aren't familiar with the introduction to the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident. That word self-evident is very important, Because self-evident refers to a per se crime. If you look at the definition of a per se crime, it is any crime that is self-evident. Okay? So a per se crime is a crime that is complete in itself. You don't have to show willfulness or knowledge, and there is no finding of facts that's necessary. It derives from an oath. If I take an oath and I promise to do something, and then I fail to do what I promised, I have committed a crime per se, meaning that I don't get a trial. There's no finding of facts because it's self-evident, right? So if you have the self-evident right to life, it's written right there in the Constitution. You can read that. It's self-evident. And they had an obligation by the self-evidence to ensure the protection of your life. And therefore, if government unalived you, then we held these truths to be self-evident that you're entitled to your life. Therefore, government, you're held liable for the self-evident per se crime that you committed when you breached your obligation of preserving the life of this individual. Okay? So we hold these truths to be self-evident. And so with a per se crime, if you look at like Article 3, go to Article 3, because Article 3 says the trial of all crimes, with the exception of impeachment, shall be by jury. Why is it that impeachment is not require a finding of facts, a jury? Because it's per se. It's self-evident, okay? So we don't have to show that they intended to breach their obligation. We don't have to show that they willfully did it, right? We just have to show that they did it because they had an obligation to do something and they didn't do it. That's self-evident, all of it. Therefore, their crimes are based upon the obligation. So if the judge has an obligation to not hold someone over for a capital or interest crime without first having an indictment by a grand jury, and then he decides, I'm going to hold someone over without an indictment by a grand jury, well, we can hold the truth to be self-evident, judge, that you were required to have an indictment by a grand jury. Therefore, your breaking of the law is per se, because you promised that you would do what the Constitution of the United States says. In fact, that contract that you created and established when you entered in your office, and you made that promise, it says that the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution, right? Bound thereby. Now, bound is also a very, very interesting word, you guys. It's a very interesting word because bound refers to something that a person is, a duty is something a person is bound to do or forbear from doing. So a duty is what someone is bound to do. So if you're bound to do something, it means you have a duty to do it or forbear from doing it, depending on the contract terms. So if the judge is bound by anything in the Constitution, then he has an obligation to do whatever is in the Constitution. And once again, an obligation establishes a duty and a right. So if the law says that you must have an indictment by a grand jury, the obligation creates the right by establishing the duty. Therefore, if the judge breaches the duty, your right has been violated, which is also why they're unalienable. Right? You can't walk into a courtroom and have a judge say to you, would you like to give up your right to trial by jury? Because in order for you to give it up, the judge must breach their obligation, and their obligation comes before your right. Because your right doesn't exist, it's not violated until someone breaches the obligation, right? So you can't give it up because before you have it to give up, the judge has the obligation to do it. And a lot of people get this wrong. They're like, well, yeah, but you have the right to contract. Yeah, we do have the right to contract. We do, absolutely. But when their contract exists before our right to contract, remember, in contract law, if you breach a contract in order to enter into a new contract, both contracts are void because by the breach of the first contract, you nullify the second contract. So if the judge created a contract when he entered into his office saying, I'll do whatever the Constitution of the United States says that I'll do, and then months and months, years later, you walk into his courtroom and he says, do you want to give up your right? He's breaching the terms of his contract in order to formulate a new contract with you, and by the breach of his promise, by the breach of the first contract, he nullifies the second. Government was there to protect the life, liberty, and environment of happiness for all the people of the United States. That was what they were instituted to do, to protect the people's freedom. That's the sole purpose of our government. That's the only reason why we created and established this government. So if that's the contract terms that we have for our government, then when they breach the terms of that contract in order to enter into a new contract to enslave the person by the breach of their contract, the Constitution, the breaking of the law, in order to enter into a new contract to enslave in violation of the Constitution, we got a problem. Right? So I want you guys to understand that the way that it works, right? The reason why the duty comes before the right, it's not really difficult to understand, but when you look at the Constitution of the United States, there's basically two parts. There's the Articles, Article 1 through 7, that establishes the duties of government. All of the duties of government are within Articles 1 through 7. Article 1 is legislative. Article 2 is executive. Article 3 is judicial. And we'll get to one moment here why those three branches of government were created and established. Okay? Has she gotten back to you? Okay. All right. So the reason why the duty comes before the right is this. Articles 1 through 7 establishes the obligation of government. Nowhere within Articles 1 through 7 do you find a right. Oh, nowhere. You find in Article 4 that they allude to the existence of rights, where they say that the citizens in each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities as the citizens in the several states, that's what creates the framework for an egalitarianism government. Because egalitarianism government is a government where all persons are equal. But in order for all persons to be equal, laws must treat them equally. If laws don't treat you equally, then that is an illegitimate law within an egalitarianism form of government. Therefore, the citizens in each state are entitled to all privileges and immunities as the citizens in the several states. So if you have a privilege or an immunity in any state, no other state can deny you that privilege or immunity, which is also part of this whole indictment by a grand jury issue, because how is it that you can go to what is the state? Oregon. Oregon does it, although Oregon still also prosecutes by its discretion, but they have a grand jury. Why is it that you can go to Oregon, and Oregon may or may not have a grand jury indictment against you, but then as soon as you cross over the river, the Columbia River, into Washington, literally a quarter mile away, that you will not get indicted by grand jury because Washington says we're not going to do it. You see, that's a privilege. It's a privilege because it's guaranteed to every person. This is a privilege. It's not an immunity because it's not protecting you from prosecution. It's a privilege that you have for protection from government. So the citizens in each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities as the citizens in the several states. And I know that you don't like those words, privilege and stuff, but let's just get past that for a moment and just understand that, okay, privilege is something that government cannot take from you, because we the people gave ourselves the privilege, right? Through the law, gave it to us. Government can't take it away. It's not government that gives us the privilege. It's the Constitution that gives us the privilege. And the Constitution was created by, or the government was created by the Constitution, which was created by us. So we gave ourselves the privilege. It's not government that gave us the privilege. We gave ourselves that through the law, through the Constitution, okay? But nonetheless, so the citizens in the state of Oregon, they have the right to an indictment by a grand jury. But a quarter mile away in the state of Washington, they do not. And yet Article 4, the framework of egalitarianism, says that the citizens in each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities as the citizens in the several states. This goes back to the drug possession issue that I've been talking about as well. That the state of Oregon, they don't prosecute for drugs anymore. You have an immunity from it, immunity from prosecution. You don't have a privilege to have drugs because the federal government says, oh, we're still going to schedule these drugs and stuff. So you don't have the privilege to have it. But Oregon has said, we're going to give you an immunity for prosecution. We're not going to prosecute you for having it. That's an immunity. Which means that if the citizens in the state of Oregon have an immunity to drug possession, then how is it that New York is still prosecuting for drug possession under Article 4? And the privileges and immunities provision of Article, they can't, right? Because of the egalitarianism framework that's put into place, unless these states are sovereign and can do whatever they want within their own jurisdictional borders, right? because they can pick and choose which pieces and parts of the central government's legislation that they want to actually put into place because they have the authority to do so. They have the sovereignty to do so. So one second, I'll be back to that. But so Articles 1 through 7 establishes the obligation of government. Nowhere within Article 1 through 7 do you find a right. Another example would be Article 3, where it says that the trial of all crimes, with the exception of impeachment, shall be by jury, and the trial shall occur in the state in which the crime is said to have been committed. Is that a right to a trial by jury, or is that a duty for trial by jury? Well, that's a duty, because it's directing someone as to the way in which you adjudicate a crime for any crime except for impeachment by trial by jury. So if they were to say to you, do you want to give up your right to trial by jury? Well, before you have that to give up, they have to breach their obligation of ensuring that the jury trial is in place. We, the people, have the right to due process of the law because the judges in every state have the duty to ensure that those rights are provided. If they don't provide those rights, then they breach their duty, and by their breach of duty, that gives rise to violation of our rights. They're inalienable, because their duty comes before our rights, because Articles 1 through 7 creates the obligations and duties of government. And that was ratified and adopted by the people on September 17th, 1787. Then the Bill of Rights were adopted and ratified by the people on December 15th, 1791. So the duty came before the right. Okay, the duty came before the right, because the duties were adopted and ratified by the people in 1787. Then the rights were adopted and ratified by the people in 1781 or 1791. Therefore, the duty came before the right. So when a judge walks into his office and he swears an oath that he will support and defend the Constitution of the United States, and he'll be obligated there by anything in the Constitution or laws of any state, country notwithstanding, that is his first duty. He took that, right, upon entering into his office. Therefore, 2 years later, when you walk into his courtroom, his duty came before the existence of your right. He promised to do something before he had the ability to offer for you to give it up. That means that they are inalienable. Because if they were able to say, do you want to give up your right, then they would be abusing their discretionary authority in order to break the law, in order to break the Constitution. They have an obligation, Constitution codified. And obligations of the Constitution can never be discretionary, and they can never be delegated. You may not ever use your discretion to abridge an obligation of law. Because if they could, then wouldn't that mean that, oh, well, I'm not going to be held accountable for this unaliving that I did because I did it by my discretion? It doesn't work. You can't use discretion to break the law any more than they can use discretion to break the law. Right? So their duty comes before the right. That's what makes them inalienable, because the rights came after the duty. And so, that's where we're at. But they believe that it's different. They believe that you can give it up, and that you're giving up based upon, contract negotiation. Another question that we have is when you walk into that courtroom, do you waive jurisdiction? No. You do not waive jurisdiction when you walk into a court. Simply walking into a courtroom does not grant them jurisdiction, because that jurisdiction comes before you can be called into that courtroom. Jurisdiction is a creation of the Constitution, right? The Constitution is created by the people, but a creation of the jurisdiction is the court, and the courts then create the agents, right? So if they can call you into a courtroom without jurisdiction, how can that court be a court if the Constitution's jurisdiction does not grant them the authority to be a court, the authority to speak the law, the authority to arbitrate an issue? The people created the Constitution, right? And that Constitution creates the jurisdiction. The jurisdiction is what gives a court the authority to speak the law and to arbitrate an issue. Absent jurisdiction, the court has no authority to do anything. Therefore, that agent has no authority to do anything, because that agent is nothing without the court's jurisdiction. If the court doesn't have jurisdiction, that is a person portraying himself as a judicial officer, or portraying himself as a law enforcement officer, or portraying himself as a prosecuting attorney, because they're not without the court having jurisdiction, because the court can't create an agent without delegated authority to do so. And that delegated authority derives from the delegated authority that we gave to them through the Constitution of the United States of America. We created the jurisdiction. And any court that acts without jurisdiction to create an agent, well, that court is acting completely unlawfully. So, another great example is Title 28, subsection 455. Title 28 is the federal judicial code. And most of these states say, oh, that doesn't apply to us because that's federal law. Well, you know what, states? Pull your head out of your ass, because it does apply to you, because the Constitution, this Constitution, and the laws of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land, and they shall enjoy legal superiority over any conflicting provision of states' constitutions and laws. All of the central government's laws are applicable to every single state in their entirety. There is no state that can say we are not going to do what the Constitution of the United States of America says that we must do, because every single state in America is subject to a higher government's laws. Because a union is defined as two or more non-sovereign states with a centralized governing structure. And a non-sovereign state is a state that's not complete in itself, subject to a higher government's laws. Every single state is subject to a higher government's laws because they gave up their sovereignty to join the union to subject themselves to the supremacy of the United States Constitution. We are going to destroy sovereignty very, very easily and handily here, because no state can be sovereign, because every state is subject to the supremacy of the central government's laws. Now, let me tell you, going back to what John Marshall said in the case Marbury versus Madison here. Thank you so much, Joe. Joe, appreciate those, brother. Thank you so much. Again, the power of government is defined and it's limited. We want a limited government because we don't want an unlimited government. Because an unlimited government can act arbitrarily and capriciously to do whatever they want against the people of the United States. We don't have an unlimited government. We have a limited government because we, the people, limited them. And that's why powers are limited, right? In some cases, the state's powers are limited. In other cases, federal government's powers are limited. In more cases, both powers are limited, but all to preserve the individual liberties of the people, right? Because that's the purpose of the Constitution. But our problem right now is that this Constitution of the United States of America, of the first 28 Supreme Court justices that served on the court, 22 of them owned their own slaves. So we have a bunch of slave owners who took a desire to proliferate their institution, right? Their business, who wanted to preserve their property, who were the first chief justices of the United States of America, who decided that they could create law through their rulings and fundamentally change the purpose of the Constitution of the United States by making it a weapon of oppression and enslavement instead of a charter of freedom, right? And so we have all of these Supreme Court justices, these Supreme Court rulings, because judges make rulings. We have these Supreme Court rulings that were erroneously called law, case law. And then they took their law, they put it at the foundation by removing the fundamental rights to people, such as the indictment by a grand jury, right? They removed that fundamental right, that protection and privilege of the people. They removed that and they put into place their ruling that they called law. And now we say Hurtado's the law of the land. Hurtado versus California is the case that the Supreme Court used to remove the fundamental right of indictment by a grand jury. They said you don't have to do it, California. You can do whatever you want to do because your Constitution is the supreme law of the land, because you don't do what the Constitution says, and that's okay. Supreme Court of the United States made that, sided with the state of California's Constitution and said, yep, California, you don't have to do what the Constitution says you don't have to do. And in doing so, what they did was they amended the Constitution. They removed the privilege of the people delegated by us, the obligation that the court itself has. Like, remember, the indictment by a grand jury, this issue is, the crime is committed by the judge. Because the Fifth Amendment says no person shall be held to answer for a capital or immense crime unless a presentment or indictment of a grand jury. Who makes the decision to hold someone over? That would be the judge. It's the judge that's committing the crime. Yes, prosecutor, you guys are negligent in this. You guys are complicit in the criminal conspiracy. It's undermining the laws of the United States because you are bringing the correct charge and instrument, but you're not committing the crime. The judge is committing the crime because the judge is making the decision to hold someone over. It is the judicial branch that is absolutely 100%, accountable for these criminal acts. They're the ones that's committing crime. They're the ones that's established the conspiracy, right? The incorrect charging instrument is being brought by the prosecuting attorney, but judge, it's your responsibility to make sure that the indictment's there, because you can't hold someone over without an indictment by a grand jury. Read the Constitution. You're the one committing the crime. You guys are the criminals, right? Because you were obligated to do something and you decided not to do it because your Supreme Court, the highest court in the land in 1887, said we're not going to do it. So what the Supreme Court of the United States did was they removed something that was there for them, that protect the people from them. They said, oh, you don't have to do it, California. We're going to remove the obligation that we, the judges, have so we can enslave and imprison at a much higher rate, because we're just nothing but a bunch of slave owners and sympathetic slave owners. I mean, Waite made that decision. Waite was from Tennessee. He was sympathetic to slavery institution. He was a train wreck at best, came from the most corrupt presidential administration in history, the Grant administration, right? Well known, right? Waite was it was the decisions he made was all to advance the slavery institution. We see it from Plessy versus Ferguson. We see it from Cruikshank versus United States. We see it from the civil rights cases, the slaughterhouse cases. All of these cases were all designed to change the Constitution from a charter of freedom into a weapon of oppression in the hands of judges, so they can do whatever they want, arbitrarily, capriciously, and profit off of these illegal acts that they commit. It's a disgusting institution. And it's an institution that we're going to take the buck down if they don't step up and hold their predecessors accountable for the treasonous and seditious behavior of those despicable people that they tell us we need to stand up and call honorable. There's no honor in Chief Justice Waite. There's no honor in Chief Justice Taney. There's no honor in Chief Justice Marshall. They're all traitors, and I will not fucking honor a traitor. That's for damn sure. So, if they are too scared to step up and fix the problem because they think the problem's too big, then what I'm going to say to them is that maybe this is too big of a job for you. Because the purpose of the Supreme Court is to make decisions that will impact all of the regional governments, right? Judicial decisions. Therefore, Supreme Court, when you make a decision and a ruling, every single court within your purview must do what you say that they must do. And if they don't, then you're not really a Supreme Court of anything. If you can't step up and make the lower judges obey the very laws that you must obey, if you permit them to create rulings and erroneously call it law and allow these states to do things contrary to the Constitution of the United States, then I'm going to say to the Supreme Court of the United States that you don't have an institution anymore. Because the only reason why you exist is because of Article 3. Article 3 created your court and your authority. So if you don't have the courage, the fortitude, or the integrity to step up and defend Article 3, then by your failure to take action, your state judges, your own workers, your own lowest on the totem pole workers are more powerful than you are. And you're all just a bunch of fools and liars because you don't have the courage and integrity to defend the Constitution of the United States and make sure that your edict actually is performed and incorporated and followed by the lower courts. This is what you're supposed to do, Supreme Court. This is your job. And so, when we went into the Constitutional Convention 234 years ago, when we went into it, there were 3 issues that had to get addressed. 3 issues. Issue number 1 was there was no way to get the states or the regional governments to actually implement the laws that were created by the central government. So we were a confederacy, right? And a confederacy is defined as 2 or more sovereign states with a loose decentralized government structure. And a sovereign state is a state that's complete in itself, not subject to a higher government's laws. The reason why we couldn't do it was because the states were sovereign. And we couldn't interfere with the sovereign state. So the central government could create laws, right? They had it with the confederacy. They could do whatever they want to do, and then they give it to states. States were like, I don't want to do that. That's not in my best interest. And so they're picking and choosing which pieces and parts of the central government's legislation they actually wanted to implement or not implement. And there was no way to get them to actually do what they were, what the central government created and put in place. They were picking and choosing what they want to do or not do. So we resolved that first issue in the Constitutional Convention by the establishment of the legislative branch. We have a a branch of government that is equally represented by each of the regional governments. They come together and they determine what is the best solution for the nation. And then they create laws, and then those laws are to be federated out to each of the regional governments for application administration. That's what federal means, is to federate. So they would federate those laws out. Now the states, if they're sovereign, then they can say, oh no, we're not going to do that because we're sovereign. We're not subject to higher government's laws because we're sovereign, right? And if that's the case, then what is the purpose of the central government? What reason do we create a constitution? And to what purpose do we put that constitution in writing if those states that are bound to obey it are able to exceed it by their discretion? That doesn't make any sense. That's not a very strong constitution, right? Just as Abraham Lincoln said, it has long been a grave question whether any government not too strong for the liberties of its people could be strong enough to maintain its own existence in grave emergencies. Or this was also echoed by Justice Thurgood Marshall when he said that grave threats to liberty often come in times of urgency when constitutional rights deemed too extravagant to endure. We are in the middle of a very, very precarious situation right now with our government. Because as I pointed out in a number of my other videos, there is nothing right now keeping any prisoner in prison today other than fear. Fear. That's it. Fear of a goon with gun. Fear of a criminal that is unlawfully imprisoning them. Because there isn't a single contract that exists, a contract for slavery that exists here in America right now today that's lawful. Guys, even Thomas Jefferson said that slavery cannot come by way of contract. John Locke also said slavery cannot come by way of contract. So did Jacques Rousseau. These are the philosophers of our system of government, the founders and framers of our system of government. They said that slavery cannot come by way of contract. Cannot. Because you can't give up something that God gave to you. Because that would be giving up the very essence of yourself. You cannot give to someone else what God gave to you. You can't give your life to someone. Therefore, you cannot enter into a contract by slavery. Slavery cannot come by way of contract. However, here in America, according to Title 18, subsection 4083, no person can be sent to prison without their consent. No person can be sent to prison without their consent. And that's a very interesting term because consent refers to a contractual obligation. Just so that you guys know, it says that you guys are missing some of it. Maybe it's looping or something. Just so that you guys know, all of my videos are also on YouTube. All right, so you guys go to YouTube, you can download, you guys can access it, fast forward, rewind, whatever. I'm always streaming to YouTube as well, so you guys can go out to the YouTube channel. It is at Tanawah Downing, okay? So feel free to go out to YouTube if you guys are doing it, okay? States do have the right to nullify, but that's a different situation. The theory of nullification has long been refuted, right? That's something that came from, that's what started the Civil War, and I really don't want to talk about nullification because nullification, the states do not have the authority to nullify federal law by simply abstaining. And so the nullification, that was a theory that was created by Calhoun, John Calhoun, Vice President of Andrew Jackson. He was he was from South Carolina. He was Vice President during Andrew Jackson's presidency. And but this was what led to the Civil War, because the theory of nullification is that the states, they can nullify federal law by one, either refusing to enforce it, two, by ignoring it. Refuse to enforce. There's one in the middle. I can't remember. I'm sorry. It's been a little while on nullification, but they can refuse to enforce, or three, they can they can go into battle against the federal government. Basically, it's war, and that's the choice that they made in the Civil War era for the theory of nullification. Nullification has long been refuted, and the reason why states don't have the authority to nullify is because when the states entered into the Union, right, They entered into the Union and they gave up their sovereignty to subject themselves to the supremacy of the United States Constitution. That's what they did. They are non-sovereign states. They are not sovereign because they gave up their sovereignty to join the Union. The whole sovereignty issue is the statist issue, right? The Union issue was the federalist issue. And federalism is not a single state or small factions of states imposing their will upon the nation, but instead acting in the aggregate, an essential buffer between the central government and the citizenry. George Washington University. So the central government and the citizenry. That was Thomas Jefferson. Said that federalism is not a single state or small factions of states imposing their will upon the rest of the nation, but instead acting in the aggregate, an essential buffer between the central government and the people. So the theory of nullification, again, is that the states can nullify federal law by refusing to recognize it, which is what they're doing, right? So right now, today, they are nullifying the right to trial by jury by saying, oh, we don't want to do that. We don't want to do it, right? Is that okay? Huh? Is that all right? No, it's not. Because they subject themselves to the supremacy of the people of the United States. You see, if they're sovereign, then that is a confederacy. And theory of nullification leads to a confederacy. We know that from our own history. Because John Calhoun, Vice President Calhoun, said, oh, we can nullify federal laws by refusing to recognize and enforce them. And thus we started the Confederacy of the South and went into a civil war, right? Lost 1 million lives as a result of it because they refused to do what they were obligated to do because they entered into the Union and they're not sovereign. See, that theory of nullification, that's rhetoric that's bringing us back to where we were a number of years ago and is ultimately going to lead to the same exact... I don't know what Greenland is. I don't understand your question there. So the theory of nullification leads to confederacy. And a confederacy is defined as two or more sovereign states with a loose, decentralized governing structure. So my point here in all of this, is what is the role of these states within our system of government? If the states are sovereign, then we live in a confederacy. And we know today, from our own experience, that a confederacy promotes slavery. We know that. From our own personal history, we can see the confederacy promotes slavery. We also know that a confederacy promotes hostility because there's not peace and harmony amongst all of the regional governments, right? We know that a confederacy breaks down the union because it's the exact opposite of a union. We know that a confederacy refuses to recognize or enforce the laws that are created by the greater whole, right? So South Carolina, if you don't like the way that things are being done, that doesn't give you the right to be able to say, we're not going to do it because we don't like you. Because in doing so, you're not part of America anymore. You are a sovereign nation of South Carolina, and there's nothing that protects the people between you and their rights, because the people don't have rights if you have the authority to abridge them by your discretion, South Carolina. Now, we can also go into the Constitution, right? Because we always got to look for a constitutional connection to be able to prove that I'm right. Guys, don't just listen to me. You know, I could be full of shit. Make sure that I'm correct, but you can find that I'm correct in Article 1, Section 10. Article 1, Section 10. Because Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution says, jury nullification you can nullify. That's a different ballgame, because that's the people nullifying it, not the government nullifying it, right? Completely different things. Thank you for pointing that out, Daniel. Absolutely correct. There is jury nullification because that's the people nullifying the law, and the people absolutely can nullify the law. Government may not. So government can't just say, oh, we're not going to do what the people of the United States say that we must do, because that's a different type of that's nullification that John Calhoun promoted, okay? But once again, so Article 1, Section 10. Article 1, Section 10 says, no states shall form a confederacy. All right? Will you please dump Outcast? I don't need his time. I don't need him here. He's a waste of time. Thank you. So Article 1, Section 10 says that no state shall form a confederacy. Right? So a confederacy is two or more sovereign states with a loose decentralized governing structure, and a sovereign state is a state that's complete in itself, not subject to a higher government's laws. Okay? That's not a union. That's not what the people of the United States believe in. That doesn't preserve the rights of the people, nor does it limit the powers of government. So again, I got to circle back to what John Marshall said in Marbury versus Madison here. To what purpose are laws created? And to what reason are those laws reduced to writing? If those that are bound to adhere to them are able to exceed them by their discretion. Why do you have the right to a trial by jury if the prosecutor or the judge is able to say, I'm not going to give you that right? What is the purpose of the Constitution if those that are bound to be restrained by the law are able to break the law by an abuse of discretion? It doesn't make any sense. None. Okay? It doesn't make any sense. And so I don't know how the courts can act on this. They obviously don't want to hear this, but we don't give a fuck, right? Because those are our rights that come by our birth, that are guaranteed by our faith, and that are restrained by their promise. So the choice is up to them. Do they want to be a traitor and thus meet the end of any other traitor, treated the same as we would treat any other one? Because just because you call yourself honorable, and just because you walk around in a long black flowing robe, and just because you snuck your way into the highest office of this country, doesn't make you not a traitor. If you lie to the people of the United States because you want to advance your financial interests, because you want to preserve your business and your property, I'm going to say to you, you got another fucking thing coming. Because you may not break the law in order to kill people. You may not break the law in order to enslave people. You may not break the law in order to destroy families. You may not break the law to rob us of children. And you may not break the law to take away our property. All of which you were instituted and created to preserve, protect, and defend. And by your breach of obligation, by your breaking of the law, you're all traitors. And that's why, even for me, guys, when I realized that I had an oath, that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, I took that oath. I made that promise to people of the United States. When I realized that the things that I was doing was in violation of that promise that I made, I had to decide, am I a man of honor? Am I going to do the things that I say that I will do? Even if no one believes me, right? I knew that I was right. I knew that they were wrong from the very beginning. And it's taken me 9 years to get to where I'm at today, where there's 71 people listening to what I got to say. But you know what? I'll take those 71 because 9 years ago, there wasn't a single person listening to what I had to say. Not one single person. Not one. But I knew it was right because of my faith. My faith said I was right. I had faith in that Constitution of the United States. And that faith has gotten me to where I'm at right now today, right? Where I literally went from being at the top of my industry, right? Where I was getting ready to be bid as the chief architect and managing consultant for the Pentagon's and White House's video consolidation project. You don't get much higher than that from an architect, an engineering architect position within national. You don't get higher. I would have went straight from there into an advisor of national security with the president, right? You don't get. I went from the top of the fucking industry to the absolute bottom, right? God took me down to the bottom, removed that mask, right? Took away those blinders and showed me that I was on the wrong fucking side. And now I built myself back up on the other side. I've gone from mountaintop to mountaintop now because of this faith. We're going to win this, right? We're going to win this because I know what they do because I've been there, right? I've been there, right? I've been there. And so And so this is a decision that they're all going to make, and they're going to have to make, and I'm going to help them make it. They will either tell the truth and come to terms with their criminality, or we will expose them for exactly what they are. I want this in the least destructive manner. I'm not calling for punishment because I want reconciliation, right? I want everyone to be saved, not just some of us. I want every fucking one of us to be saved because that's what's in the best interest of this country. But that's a decision that every single individual has to make on their own. And I'm working on getting government to acknowledge and make their decision. I told them 9 years ago that you guys either tell the people of the United States the truth or I'm going to help you do it, right? And I'm helping them do it. They're either going to do it, and if they don't, then punishment's going to be on them, because just as scripture says in Genesis, right? If you eat the fruit of that tree, you will most certainly die. And every one of these public officials, they all know that if you eat the fruit of treason, the punishment is death. So we can bring them up here, right? And I want them to decide. Because if I can get one of them to say, you know what? The shit he's saying is the truth. I'm kind of a piece of shit. And I'm talking to you, Thomas, because I know you're the one that's going to sign it, man. I know it. I've known it for a long time. Thomas, I'm talking to you right now. You're a piece of shit today. You're a traitor today. You sold yourself out to fucking business, to Epstein, all the rest is, but you know what, man? I know that when you started, you were honorable. I know that when you started, you did it for the right reasons, right? I know that. I know that you're honorable, Thomas. And I know that it's only going to take your signature. We only have to have one justice on the United States Supreme Court actually sign what I submitted to you. And I know you have a copy of it. I know it's sitting on your desk. So you can ignore something and continue to allow me to say the things I'm saying, knowing that you can't do a damn thing about anything that I say because it's all the truth. And if you come after me and try to hold me accountable for the truth, then the truth is going to come out, right? It's simply going to add credibility to what I'm doing. We know that you can't do anything to me because I'm speaking the truth. You can't arrest me for speaking the truth because that's just going to bring attention to the issue. You can't unalive me because of the truth because that's just going to bring additional opposition against you. You know that I'm going to continue to say these things about you and Roberts and Sotomayor and Kavanaugh and all the rest of you. You know I'm going to continue to do that until one of you steps up and decides to be honorable and just do the right thing and help the people of the United States by addressing the crimes of those criminals that came before you. And you can be the hero. And no one has to know that anyone else was I don't need any credit. Just give the people the rights that they're entitled to, Mr. Thomas. Just do that. You can sign it because it only takes one justice to sign what I delivered to you, what's sitting on your desk. It takes one justice to sign it. And then tomorrow, you can retire into obscurity and be gone. And by your signature, you will direct all of your agents that work for you, through your edict to obey the fucking law. And that's all you have to do. And then you can be the hero, because I know that you want to set your people free. I know that you want to remove the oppression. I know that you have become a scumbag because money has poisoned you, but you don't have to remain a scumbag tomorrow. You can retire and be a hero. But it's going to require your signature, and it's going to require your truth. I'm going to continue to push you toward that truth, and I guarantee you that there's going to come a point in time when the tables are going to flip here, right? Thomas, there's going to come a point in time when the people are going to be hearing what I'm saying, and that's going to be too late for all of you. And it may be too late for the other 8. We don't give a fuck about the other because we only need one, right? We only need one, and that could be you, Mr. Thomas. You can do that. But if you don't want to do it, then maybe you do, Miss Sotomayor, right? I mean, we talk about proud Hispanic woman, right? And you hear that rhetoric bullshit from you all the time. It's just bullshit. Because look at the overpopulation of the Hispanic people within the southern states, Texas and California. You yourself are oppressing and arresting at a much higher rate your own people, and you can say that it's you. You're in charge of those institutions. You're the reason why it's happening. So take responsibility, accountability for what you are doing to your own people, and stop lying and saying you're a proud Hispanic woman, because you're not. You're full of shit. Because a proud Hispanic woman is going to be proud of their people and actually go out and help their people and not put them in institutions so that you could force them into involuntary servitude so you could profit off of your illegal acts, Ms. Sotomayor. So that's not really a very honorable person. That's certainly not as a very proud Hispanic fucking person. But maybe you want to turn back, maybe you want to help those. Maybe you want to actually be what you say you are. And it only requires one signature. And I know that writ's sitting on your desk too. I know it. It's sitting on your desk. You can sign that writ. You can be the hero. You can save your people and set them free from the oppression that your institutions brought upon them. You can do that, Ms. Sotomayor. You can do that. It only requires one. But if you guys don't want to do it, if you guys are too cowardice, too afraid to do it, then how about this? We already have one that's done it, only he hasn't signed it. He instead wrote it in a book called Overruled. Mr. Gorsuch, you're going around the country and you're talking about how all of these judges are acting unconstitutionally. You stated in your book that these prosecuting attorneys are threatening and intimidating witnesses in order to force them into pleading guilty, which is a fucking crime. It's extortion. You wrote in your same book that CPS is threatening and intimidating parents in order to steal their children. You said that in your book. That is knowledge of a crime that your agents are committing. And if you have knowledge of a felony and you fail to take action to correct that felony, then guess what? You are fucking implicated in it. And we have your own words. In a judicial memo that you wrote on November 11th of 2023, we have your own words saying that you're aware. We have your book saying you're aware. We have no less than 100 fucking press conferences that you've done with admitting that you're aware of these crimes, and yet guess what? You're permitting it to continue. So, we already got you. We've already got your proof that you're knowledgeable and aware of these crimes that are being committed by your agents, and yet you're not doing anything to correct the behavior of those agents. You could do that by the writ that's sitting on your desk, because it only requires one signature. And if you want to prevent yourself going to a place where your neck is going to be a whole lot longer than it is today, then I would say that you probably should sign that just to save your ass, because you've already admitted it. And the problem that I have with you, sir, is that at least the other 8 haven't admitted it. You have. You're kind of a piece of shit as far as I'm concerned, and everybody wants to walk around and talk about how amazing you are, and yet your words and your actions don't align. Nah, man. You fucking said that the judges across this country are committing crimes, and yet you're in charge of those judges, and you're too much of a coward to actually fucking go out. Grow a fucking backbone and go out and direct them to act lawfully by you yourself acting lawfully. Because today you're a criminal, man. And then you wonder why all of these judges are acting criminally. It's because you're a fucking criminal, Gorsuch. And until you choose to return to established rule of law and obey the will of the people and fulfill the obligations that you made when you entered into that office, you're going to remain a criminal. And you're the one that's leading all of those agents toward criminality. So I'm not going to hold them accountable before I hold you accountable, Gorsuch. You're a traitor. And that's today. But tomorrow you don't have to be, because you can choose to turn and go a different direction. So this is what I want, you guys, right? I want these justices to understand that they're responsible for all of the judges across the country. And if these judges are doing things unlawfully, unconstitutionally, if they're stealing children, killing people, if they're doing all these things, it's because they are being permitted to do it by these criminals at the top. And so we're going after those criminals first, and I want them to step up, because it would be a whole lot easier, a whole lot cleaner, a whole lot more peaceful if they chose to do it on their own than if I have to make them do it through action of the people. All right, so we got to get out of here. It's after time, guys. I operate on donation. You guys know this. Right? I'm out here doing this because I love my country. I love all of you. I'm here to serve you. We have gotten no donations other than Miss Rainbow. Thank you so much for that yesterday. We don't have money for anything. So you guys, if you like the service, you want to see me keep doing it, then we need your help, right? We need your help. The Cash App, Chime, Venmo, PayPal, they're all exact the same. It's We Shall Be Free, all right? We Shall Be Free. It's WESHALLBEFREE. We Shall Be Free. Guys, what we're doing right now is we're done. All we're doing is we're bringing knowledge of this issue. All of you are helping me do it. Every word I'm saying, you guys know is the truth. And we got this, man. It's in the bag. Only need one justice to step up. So Thomas, pull your head out of your ass. Help us out here because we're a little bit tired of your fucking dragging your feet and delaying. We're tired of hearing about you and your expensive fucking trips with Epstein and all the rest. Just step up and be an honorable man for once in your career. Step up and be honorable and sign the fucking writ that was delivered to you on September 29, 2023 under the case Tanawah M versus State of Washington. Direct the agents across this country to obey the very laws that you must obey by your signature. Deliver that edict and let's move on with this country, okay? Be a hero, retire, go about your business, and have a nice life, okay? Thank you guys so much. God bless. Have a great rest of your day, okay? Thank you. Thank you guys so much over here. Thank you, YouTube guys. Thank you guys so much. We'll be in touch here. Thank you guys, YouTube.